We are tracking developments in the trial of 3 Tacoma police officers in the death of Manuel Ellis. Thanks for joining us. I'm Christine Pay. Ellis died while being restrained by police in March of 2020. Officers Matthew Collins, Christopher Burbank, and Timothy Rankin are all facing charges in his death. King 5 is live streaming the entire trial from opening to closing statements. We take you now to the courtroom live.
Hadn't grown in the 2 years.
Well, it's essentially about the same size width-wise. And essentially, that's what the view is. It's not so much how tall it is, it's the view as you kind of come up to it.
Okay.
I would also point out that 529 is the video from the Gopro that I wanted to offer. And part of why that's important is that it shows driving straight up Ainsworth. And what it shows is that it's essentially a tunnel view that you can see straight ahead to the intersection from a distance quite far back.
I have to tell you, why do we care about any of this?
Well, we care in part, Your Honor, because remember that the officers claim that Mr. Ellis is out in the intersection interfering with another car before they contact him.
Right, but that's the intersection.
Correct, and that's the view coming up Ainsworth that Mr. Cowden would have had. So Mr. Cowden can see that intersection from quite a ways back on Ainsworth, and that's what the GoPro seeks to show. And it essentially, there was nobody out in the intersection, as he will testify. He didn't see any other car. Mr. Ellis out there trying to wave his arms, trying to stop a car, etc. So I think it's relevant to those two issues.
Did he see Mr. Ellis at all?
He saw Mr. Ellis when he came up to the intersection and saw him walk kind of from the sidewalk to the side of the patrol car where he right next to Mr. Burbank, and then he doesn't know exactly what he saw because he couldn't see the door, but he saw a movement and Mr. Ellis move forward and then the fight or the attack. That's what he sees, but he doesn't see him out in the intersection as the officers have described.
Well, he can testify to this.
Mm-hmm. It's true, but I would just...
It sounds like we got this really convoluted explanation about how this mapping of Ainsworth Street occurred in an area that doesn't matter, all to rebut an argument that they may or may not make.
Well, Your Honor, I think that's why we seek to show it. I don't see any prejudice to being able to show. It's basically just a GoPro kind of coming up the street and the vision you would have as you drive up Ainsworth.
Well, if this becomes a point of contention, then conceivably you could bring that. But I'm not seeing this as necessarily a problem. Because if Mr. Cowden says, I didn't see a car, or I didn't notice a thing with a car, then he didn't.
Understood. I mean, we can call back Mr. Wells. I was simply just trying to avoid having to call him back to testify to that. But that's fine if the court doesn't want to allow us to play it at this time.
I just think this is unnecessary and irrelevant. As I say, if it somehow becomes relevant, then you can sort of come back to this. But
understood. I also had a couple of other issues that I wanted to raise just before we get started. One is that, and this occurred last Thursday, we were advised by Mr. Ellis's family that Officer Rankin was out in the hallway taking photographs of them during one of the breaks. And obviously they were concerned about his doing that. He apparently
he was taking photographs of who?
Of the victim's family.
Yeah.
Out in the hallway. And they, in addition to that, it's my understanding that today Sarah McDowell is here to testify. She went up to the 4th floor and was waiting at the lunch break by herself on a bench, and Mr. Rankin and his family or supporters basically came and sat right next to her on the bench. So again, I think it's just an issue of the witnesses feeling intimidated by that. There were certainly other places, as I understand it, where he could have sat and where his family could have sat other than right next to a witness in the case. So I would just ask that the court maybe admonish the supporters and Officer Rankin not to do things that might be perceived as intimidating to the witnesses, including having contact with them. And then the second issue I have is with respect to Ms. McDowell. The defense disclosed Exhibit 2706 last Thursday, I believe it was. And this is a petition for an order of protection that Ms. McDowell filed in 2019 involving a person named Kiernan Renee Johnson. And we don't see any relevance to this particular petition for order of protection, and would ask the court to preclude the defense asking about this petition on cross-examination.
I can address the petition real quick. It's just potentially something that she would be impeached with depending on what she says on the stand. So at this point, we don't plan to use it, but we may. And then the state can object.
Okay, well, if it doesn't get admitted, then I have to worry about it. Yes, you wanted to comment on the first and the second, or just the first?
Sure, I can comment on both. My client has not been taking pictures of anyone, so that's not true. He has also been eating lunch on the 4th floor throughout, I think he started last week. We've been trying to find a place where he can go to eat lunch. And so he found the 4th floor to be fairly quiet. He doesn't even know who Miss McDowell is. Miss McDowell has never even seen my client either, at least in relation to this incident. I mean, Miss McDowell never even saw my client on scene as far as I'm aware. So he has no reason to believe. He didn't even know who Miss McDowell was. The only reason he called me at lunch and said that Miss Nicolavo came outside and was glaring at him as if he had did something wrong and asked me, I don't understand what's going on. I feel like there's like, am I not supposed to sit on the 4th floor? I said it's a public courthouse. You can sit wherever you want. Just be careful, that there's not jurors around, and that's what I advised him.
And I would just indicate that obviously we provided to the defense the photographs of the witnesses that we intended to use in opening statement. So,
But did Ms. McDowell say that anything was said to her?
no,
What's
just didn't understand why they sat down right next to her during the course of that. So,
Well, it is my understanding that family and defendants have been using the 4th floor common areas during breaks in this trial. So
We-
that's not a surprise.
okay, we understood that they were using the conference room that counsel said that they were going to use down on the 1st floor. So we weren't aware that they were using.
The lawyers maybe, I don't know.
We don't have any conference room, the AGs, but we don't.
What happened to your space that the AG was complaining about?
Well, they complained, so we didn't take it.
You didn't take it, or was the offer withdrawn?
It wasn't withdrawn, Your Honor, we're still trying to find a place, and so far, no luck, and that's why my client and his family are on the 4th floor.
Well, so far I can't, there's only so much I can negotiate. I can't, and navigate through. I'm not going to navigate through everybody's needs for office space, equipment, paper
fine.
clips, and so on.
We haven't raised it with the court, Your Honor.
But I haven't heard anything that was wrongful at the moment that anybody has done. It is a public spot. We certainly can control photography within the courtroom. Beyond that, I can't control it a whole lot. So I don't know whether he's taking any or not, but he could if he wanted to. Certainly, I know people have taken photographs of him. So it's not surprising. And I know that the family of Mr. Ellis has allowed themselves to be photographed in the media and so on. And there was testimony here about some of that, that we got from Miss Carter Mixon last week. So I'm not sure what the deal is. Certainly I don't want anybody trying to intimidate anybody, period. I really don't. I've been trying to keep this as neutral a possible forum as I can. And emotions run high in cases like this. And for example, sometimes when we have an arraignment on a charge of homicide or some other serious crime, at the arraignment, there's often not a whole lot of opportunity to try to keep the parties separated from each other. And so there have been incidents in the past in which spectators in the gallery have made threats to each other and even assaulted each other. And so it's not surprising that in cases we handle that this kind of thing happens. One of the reasons that we took some time in this particular case to have our staff, I didn't meet with either any of the family members, but I know some of our staff did in advance of the trial, to talk about how seating would be allocated in such a way to try to minimize that kind of issue. It was done with the intent of, one, maintaining the integrity of these proceedings, but it's also to make sure that the parties who want to be here and the folks who want to be here can be here and feel safe. That goes for everybody. There's a certain amount, there's a limit to how much we can do, and if people want to break those rules, they can, I suppose. But so far, I think, people have been cooperative, and I really appreciate it. And they've been patient with us, because I know that sometimes this process seems drawn out and process heavy, and for someone who's not used to all this, that can be frustrating. And when you're frustrated, you can get emotional too. And if you're already emotional, all this just contributes. So if everybody just continues to stay cool, I think we're going to be fine. So let's keep that in mind.
Understood.
So, well, I was going to say, well, never mind. I think we already handled the issue about exhibits 525, 526, and 527. And you're going to move on to a new issue with Mr. Wells then?
Yes,
Okay. All right, so we ready for the jury?
yes.
Sounds like it. Thank you. Mrs. Winnie, please get the jury. Excuse me. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Please be seated. And Ms. Eakes, continue when you're ready.
Mr. Wells, did you have an opportunity to observe and drive Ainsworth Avenue up to 96th?
Yes,
Can you just describe the nature of that road?
flat, level. As you approach the T, which is 96, it's like you're approaching in a tunnel. You can see what's at the end of Ainsworth as the sides extend into the intersection.
All right, I want to go back to Exhibit 521 in the diagramming program, if you could, and I want to talk about one other measurement.
Okay,
We showed a few moments ago in 521P. Can you bring that up? All right, we talked about the distance that you'd measured from the front of the patrol car to the resting place of Mr. Ellis. Is that right?
yes,
And as you viewed the videos and the other evidence in this case, before Mr. Ellis's final resting place where we see him in 521P, did you know if there was another landmark on the street where Mr. Ellis was during the incident with the officers?
there were several, I think 3, either call them manhole covers or sewer covers.
All right. And if you go back to 521, then in the diagramming program, can you show the jury where the manhole covers were that you saw, that were in the video?
There's one here, near Mr. Ellis at his place on the roadway. One more to the middle of the intersection here, and one over here.
Right. And did you measure the distance between the front of the patrol car and the manhole cover that's closest to Mr. Ellis's body?
Yes,
And what's that distance?
22.20 feet, or probably somewhere shortly, a little bit over 22 feet.
All right. And did you create a screenshot of that?
Yes,
May I approach your honor? Handing you what's been marked as 521Q. Can you tell us what that is?
that's the screenshot showing the distance measurement between that sewer cover and the front of the patrol car.
Off of 521Q.
Evidently that occurred. Well, this is what's being shown, shows the measurement, and, but I don't have too big a problem with that, which we should avoid that, of course. I don't have any big problem with it in this particular instance. Anyway, do you have an objection to the omission of 521Q? 521Q. Okay. 521Q is admitted.
I just want to go back and clarify one other issue with respect to the scans. You made a reference earlier to it being a fisheye view from the scans. Can you just explain to the jury what you meant by that?
As you get outside the parameters of the direction that you're trying to scan, do a particular scan in, it tends to skew or elongate the visuals that you're looking at. And this, most of the time, a car looks longer or wider than it actually is.
And is that what we observed earlier with some of the outer edges of the scans?
Yes,
Okay. You were also asked, I believe, to do some work with respect to Ayanna White's perspective, some photos and some measurements with respect to her perspective. Is that correct?
yes.
And can you tell the jury what were you asked to do?
Go to her house and have her show us where she was looking out both windows, how she was positioned looking out both windows, and what she could see from those windows.
All right, and then what did you do after you asked her to do that?
Once we had her in position where she said she was, and it was the same bed that was in her bedroom, the bed hadn't been changed or moved any differently. So in the first one on the side window, as she was kneeling looking out the window, I handed her the camera and had her take a photo through the window towards the area where Mr. Ellis is on the roadway and all these other images.
All right, I want to have you take a look at 533 A, B, and N. Can you take a look at those and tell us what they are?
533A is a photo of Ayanna White's house, 1438 96th Street, looking from the north side of the roadway directly across at their front porch. It was A, and which other one?
B, and then N.
533B is a photo of the same house. I've moved to the west and looking at it at an angle to the, looking back to the southeast.
And N, 533N.
Closer view from standing on the sidewalk in front of the house, looking at the front porch, the upper window, the front window, and then the side window.
And did you compare the visuals of what you observed about Miss White's house when you went out there to the photos that were taken the night of this incident?
Yes, they were similar.
Were there any changes to the actual windows and their locations on the house?
No.
I'd offer 533 A, B, and N.
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, 533A, B, and N are all admitted.
May we publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Why don't we start with 533A? Mr. Wellison, just you can show the jury. All right, can you just describe what's shown in 533A?
The house, 1438 South 96th Street. This is looking directly across the street at it. The photo shows the rockery in front, the fencing, the front porch, the upper window with an AC unit in it, and the front window facing the street.
Are you able to zoom in on it so we can see that a little bit better? All right, thank you. How about 533B? Same thing, if you could kind of maybe zoom in a little bit.
View from the angle, so I'm looking to the southeast. Still see the porch, the upper window with the AC unit, most of the front facing window and the side window.
All right, so maybe you talked about their perspective photos for Ms. White. What were the two windows that you looked at or that you used with her for perspective photos?
The small one was the one where she was kneeling on the bed and looking out towards the intersection itself, and then she moved and was looking out from this bigger window over here on this side.
And again, could you just zoom in a little bit in terms of the side window, just because it's a little shadowed?
Right here.
And how about 533N?
Close-up view, closer, if you will, of the front porch, the AC unit, the full front window, the side window still visible over here. The Vivint camera is right here.
All right, now I think you said that you did some additional perspective photos with Ms. White. Was it actually with Ms. White?
Yes.
And can you tell us what you asked her to do?
To get in the same position from her view on the side window. She kneeled on the bed, so that she could be up with both knees on the bed, looking out the window towards the intersection. And then I handed her my camera and had her take a photo, or maybe two photos, from that window looking at the intersection.
Did you make any attempt to kind of place where her eyes would land in terms of the window?
Right, once she was kneeling and in position, I made a measurement from the floor up to her eye height, and I put an orange dot on the window glass.
And what about when she was looking out the front window? Did you do the same?
Same thing over there. She didn't need to kneel. She was standing, but she actually had to lower her head slightly to see below this window jamb here that my cursor's moving back and forth across. But we also measured her eye height there and put another orange sticker there.
And did you document, as you went through this process, what you were having her do?
Yes.
And how did you document it?
I had her get in position on the bed where she was looking out. Then I took a picture of her, a photo of her kneeling on the bed, showing where she was at, and then again with the orange dot there on both windows.
If you could take a look at 533 C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J, please.
Okay?
Do you recognize those photos, Mr. Wells?
Yes.
And what are they?
Several I took of Miss White in her position as she was observing things through both the side window and the front window. I took photos of the windows with the orange dots on them, and then the other photos are photos she took out of both windows.
I offer 533 C through J.
I don't have any objection.
Okay, exhibit,
533 itself is not being offered, is that accurate?
at least at the moment, she's offering 533 C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
Correct, and I previously admitted A, B, and N.
Yeah, no objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so 533 C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J are admitted.
May we publish, Your Honor?
Proceed.
And Mr. Wells, can you just walk the jury through these photographs and refer to the exhibit numbers and just tell us what they're depicting?
Sure. 533C. This is a photo I took in Miss White's bedroom of her kneeling on the bed looking out the window. This is the side window.
And that is Ms. White in the pictures?
It is.
And did she indicate whether her bed was in that location in March of 2020, March 3rd, 2020?
Same bed, same position.
Go to the next photo.
533D, just a different viewpoint. I've moved to the left, closer to her bedroom door. Same position for her.
Okay.
533E, I have handed the camera to Miss White, and she's taking a photo looking out at the intersection.
And we see an individual there in a orange vest. Do you know who that person is?
Yes, one of my employees,
And what was the purpose of, what was your employee doing?
using a total station to measure specific points within the diagram.
And this is a photograph of Ms. White took of what she could see at that location.
That's correct.
Next.
533F, I'm taking a photo of the orange dot that I had placed for her eye height on the side window.
Can you just zoom in on that a little bit? And you're using your cursor to point out the orange dot, is that right?
That is correct. Oops.
And why did you do that, Mr. Wells? Why did you put the orange dot there?
That was so that the person at the total station could also survey to that specific point on the house, and it was used as a verification distance as well.
Was that used to create other 3D images of the view?
We didn't create a 3D image from this particular window, but we did some 3D work on using the height of the windows, etc.
Next photo.
G533G. This is the front-facing window towards 96th Street. This is the position that Miss White said she was standing in when she moved there.
Okay. Next photo.
533H. Handed the camera to Miss White. She took this photo looking out that window from that position.
I think we still see the same individual, your employee across the street there.
That's correct.
Go ahead.
533I. She's pointed the camera more directly across the street from the front window. Once again, taking a photo from the position she was in.
By standing in that front window of her bedroom.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
533J. And I'll zoom in and left. You can see the orange dot where my cursor is circling slowly in kind of the right-hand middle. I'll zoom in a little as I can find it. And here's the orange dot.
And again, is that consistent with her eye level as she stood at the window?
Right, that's to her measured eye height, yes.
And did you do that for the same purpose you previously described about the orange dot on the side window?
Yes, and we're seeing the orange side. On the opposite side, it's white.
Okay, just a moment, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Wells. That's all I have.
Okay, cross-examination.
Mr. Wells, well, you were using Exhibit 521, correct, earlier, and that has the rotation, 360-degree rotation.
Yes,
You've been using that off the computer, correct?
yes.
You can pull it up there.
And you want to go right into it? There it is. So I have to click on one of these colored dots.
And I think I want you to click on the blue one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Blue, blue. And you can kind of zoom in on that, is that right?
Yes.
Zoom in a little bit. Right where you're at, do you see that appears to be an item right behind the tire of the police cruiser?
I do.
And did you identify what that is?
It's a donut box.
Donut box. And is that box something you had actually seen in evidence as part of your examination in this case?
I never saw any evidence items for this case, but I didn't see that. So,
But you're
no.
aware that that's a donut?
I am in the,
And obviously from the evening of the incident, yeah.
yes, it's in the scene photos as well.
Okay. If you can go to, I believe, the pink dot, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the red dot. I apologize.
So this is looking west down 96, coming around.
Were you able to, right there, were you able to identify that item that appears to be sitting in the street between the two garbage cans?
Yes,
And what is that?
water bottle.
Okay. A water bottle that appears black, I guess.
In some of the other views, you can tell it's whatever brand, but it's a real water bottle.
All right. And when you did a whole, as you indicated, several distances you measured throughout your investigation of this case.
Yes,
And first of all, when you were utilizing various items for your independent investigation, I think you indicate you utilized at least measurements taken by the Tacoma Police Department this evening?
Right, and that was probably the Pierce County Sheriff's Office that did that. They were called in after the fact. That was my error.
That's fine, one of those agencies.
Yes,
And ultimately, I guess the point is, you found that whatever measurements they took were accurate.
based on the accuracy of the instrumentation and assuming that it was all set up and done correctly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have any problems with what they did as far as taking those measurements?
No,
Okay, or photographs or anything for that matter?
no.
Now, when you did your various measurements, you testified to earlier today about the measurements from where McDowell may have been situated in her vehicle to the front of the patrol vehicle here, correct?
Yes,
And you also measurements from Ariana White's window to where Mr. Ellis ended up, correct?
yes,
As well as I think to the front of that vehicle, patrol vehicle.
that's correct.
Cowden, measurements from Cowden's car to the front of the patrol vehicle.
Yes,
Okay. And did you take any measurements from the front of the vehicle to where Mr. Ellis ended up?
yes.
And what was that distance?
A little over 27 feet.
And did you take any measurements from the red circle to the Cowden vehicle?
Which red circle? I think I put a
The
couple of
red
on there.
dot,
Red dot?
I guess.
Which red dot?
You had a red and a pink.
Oh, the scan dots.
Yeah.
Let's look. So in this,
Go ahead, I'm listening.
everybody looking at you can see this view. So from the red dot here, I can put I can do the same measurement here as on the diagramming program.
Okay.
So you do a measured distance. I'm going to just pick the center, actually the edge, because otherwise it'll open that scan. And then go to the center here of Mr. Ellis, and it draws a line. And then I have to come down here and hit OK. And it shows the distance in meters, which I apologize for. I thought I'd change that. Nobody's using the metric system here.
We're still behind the time.
Yeah, we are. Let's put it in feet. Okay. So now it's in feet. 51, and it's, note, and I'm going to zoom in a hair, I'm up here above that because I wouldn't click on that, but from there over to the center of where Mr. Ellis is, that's 51.42 feet.
And you testified to a measurement earlier, there was some, use the word debate, regarding where Mr. Ellis you believe was in handcuffs.
Right?
And then, I think that might have been in exhibit 521L, if I'm not mistaken, is that accurate?
Potentially. You want me to go to 521L?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And does that show where you took the measurement where you believe Mr. Ellis was in cuffs?
Sorry, no, this is Mr. Cow 5, the 521L I have.
Okay.
Is-
No, we're using yours, that's what you testified to. You might try O then.
Oh. I have 521O as Mr. Hayes
Pull
distances.
that up. Okay, that's where you have them.
Okay,
That's what I want. And so, thank you very much.
yeah.
And so what's the measurement from the patrol vehicle to that red circle?
The,
Front of it, of course.
since this is an exhibit and a PDF, I can't measure on this. I can in the diagramming program.
Okay. And have you done that measurement?
Oh, I probably have, yeah.
Are you able to find it in your notes?
Notes are on the screen, so I don't know what it is offhand, just looking at this. It's going to be less than the 27 feet to where Mr. Ellis is.
Okay. Currently.
Yes,
And so, because when you did the handcuffs, well, when you identified it as him being handcuffed, he was in a different position than where he ended up, correct?
correct.
And you know the feet difference between those two locations?
I can give them to you by looking at the diagram.
If you would, please.
Oops. So from about the center of the red circle at the tip of that arrow, and you want to go to the front of the patrol car?
Yeah, initially, that's great.
19.9 feet
Then you can take it to the passenger side door.
of the patrol car,
Yep.
26.76 feet.
Okay, and then between, where you have indicated Mr. Ellis was handcuffed and his final resting place.
7.54 feet.
Now, you indicated when you were using this particular area for some of the measurements you testified to earlier, you said it was, if I'm not mistaken, you said it was an approximation because there was a lot of, it was fluid and there was a lot of movement.
They were moving constantly, yes.
Yeah. And were you able to take measurements as far as, you know, how they were moving from spot to spot? You understand my question? Like, if they started at point A and they ended up at point C and then went to D or whatever, did you take those various measurements?
I had tried to capture some measurements in all that, and then ultimately from all of those measurements, I did an area
Okay.
that they were moving in that I highlighted in a, I think, purple or something.
And what was it was triangulated or
Just kind of a,
what was the diameter of that area?
let me take a look at it.
Is this an exhibit we've invented already?
Oh.
At Hutch.
I assumed we were off the same one, so, it's on a different exhibit?
It's something that hasn't been put on the diagram yet.
Okay. Well, I don't want you to put it on the diagram, but I am asking you the question, so if we can take the diagram down at this point, and then you can let me know what it is.
Okay, so when I open the diagramming program, then it won't show up on the screen.
I'm thinking that's right now.
It's not up there, right?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that, Armin.
So it's got an ellipse. It's kind of longer than it is taller, but I'll give you the center.
Okay.
6.78 feet.
And that's just movement within that area.
Correct.
Right.
That's just,
It's not necessarily a true circle or anything.
that's, it looks like this,
Okay.
right? And I just went down the middle.
All right. Now, you testified earlier regarding the white residence, and I think you pulled up 533B earlier, which was the photo of the residence at an angle from across the street. Correct, remember that?
Yep.
You remember the position of the person taking the photo across the street, where that person was situated?
Let's look. Yes, I was standing on the sidewalk.
By the garbage cans that were depicted in the earlier
Well,
exhibits?
reasonably close to that, but probably maybe a hair this way or
Close to the stop line?
east. No, I wasn't to the stop line.
Okay, all right. That's fine. And then, you took some measurements, if I'm not mistaken.
That last photo, I don't know if you wanted that on the screen
I
or
do
not.
not, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you take measurements of how Mr. Calvin was situated in his vehicle when he's sitting down there?
No.
You don't know how high he was off the ground?
No, I know typical heights, but no, we just took a spot to approximately the driver's seat of the car.
Okay. And did you have take any measurements related to the height of the patrol vehicle from where the window begins from the ground?
The side window,
Either the driver's side or the passenger side, either one.
didn't do any measurements on the patrol car itself.
Okay, thank you. One moment. I think that's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Usher.
Good afternoon, Mr. Wells.
Afternoon.
How are you?
Better about yourself.
Good, thank you. You signed a contract with the Attorney General's office in this case, right?
I did.
In fact, you signed 2 contracts, right?
I did.
The first one was in April of 2021, does that seem right?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of that contract?
To set the parameters for my work and the amount of money.
All right. And the amount of money was $275 an hour?
At that time, yes.
Has it changed?
Yes.
How so?
My rate went up.
How much?
$300 an hour.
All right. And the scope of that first contractual relationship with the Attorney General's office was what? What were you asked to do?
Review the scans, and then create a diagram from those scans, and then start trying to place objects within that whole system.
And when did you start that process relative to signing the contract, do you know?
After signing the contract, had to get discovery sent over, so there was a period of time before we started,
Are we talking weeks or months?
maybe weeks.
Okay. And you know that the officers were charged in this case on May 27th of 2021, right?
Well, I'm gonna object. This is some facts, not evidence.
Well, who knows?
I
If he knows.
You know when
don't,
they were charged?
I do.
relative to signing?
I do not know.
Fair to say that you had not completed any of those diagrams within a month of signing that contract with the reconstruction?
Had not completed them, no.
Right, you had to go through all of the discovery that was provided by the Attorney General's office first, right?
Had to look at photos, videos, et cetera, yes.
And upload them into the various systems that we discussed all morning, right?
Yes.
All right. You also entered into a second contract February 1st of 2022 with the AG's office, right?
Sounds right?
Is that when the rate changed?
Maybe, I think so.
Right. And, sorry, February 1st of 2022.
Thank you.
That sounds right.
And on direct examination, Ms. Eakes asked you about the number of accident reconstructions that you have undertaken, and I think you said thousands, is that right?
Yes.
And when you're creating, in the capacity that we were discussing, thousands of accident reconstructions, that's before charges are actually filed, right?
Well, originally when I was with the sheriff's office, that would have been, I'm sorry, 1,000 or so there, 950 give or take, on-scene call-outs for just the accident stuff. And then in my private practice, we go to do scenes as well. I think I've only started keeping track realistically strongly since 2013, but it's 3,500 plus on those. But not every single time do you go to a scene. Sometimes they don't request that. But the vast majority of them, 99% plus, are civil. So no charges are related to that.
All right, you talk to me about criminal then.
Okay.
On criminal cases, before you went into private practice, almost every single one of those accident reconstructions was a pre-charging investigation, right?
But yes, it was.
Right, you're trying to provide information to the prosecuting authority to determine if in fact there's a basis for charging decision, right?
I'm gonna object to the relevance of this.
I'll permit this over.
That's accurate, right?
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. When you were performing accident reconstructions, generally speaking, on the criminal side only, the purpose of those was to document the scene of a fatality accident or a vehicular assault as part of an investigation pre-charge. Is that fair?
Correct. We had to complete the investigation, and that was always part of it.
And then that was forwarded to the prosecuting authority to determine what, if anything, to charge based on the investigation, right?
Yes.
That's not what you did in this case, right?
No.
In fact, you did the exact opposite, right?
I created the diagrams once they asked me to.
Post-charging, right?
It sounds like it. I don't know what the charging date was.
Well, the Attorney General's office asked you very specific things to do and document, right?
They wanted to show certain positions of vehicles, et cetera, yes.
All right. And what you described earlier, you would do whatever you thought was appropriate to document and then provide it to the prosecuting authority, correct?
Yes, I was trying to give them an accurate version of it, yes.
All right. And for instance, can you pull up Exhibit 521N for us in this way? I have N as in. All right. And I asked you some questions earlier about 521N or J, which documents the location of what you dropped in as the McDowell vehicle. Do you see that?
Yes.
And the Attorney General's office asked you to determine and document where you believe that vehicle was relative to the patrol vehicle and the lane of travel. Is that right?
Yes.
That was a specific request of the Attorney General's office, right?
Yes, I don't know if I recall it being that specific, but locate the vehicle.
And to locate the vehicle, you described using a variety of collateral sources to document it because the Faro scan didn't capture a vehicle in the scene, correct?
Correct, it was gone.
Right, so you used the Vivint video as a point of reference, right?
Yes.
And you also used the video that she took from in or around her vehicle to place the perspective. Is that fair?
Yep.
All right. And how far in 521N do you place Ms. McDowell's vehicle from the white turn line painted on the street?
Since this is an exhibit, I can't measure it, but when we looked at it before, it was about 3.23 feet
All right.
to her driver's side of the car.
All right. And how far back from the patrol vehicle did you estimate her vehicle to be?
I don't recall offhand.
All right. And with the court's permission, I'm going.
Do you want something marked, or you?
It's marked. Yeah, there's no.
Okay.
I have copies of my own.
Okay.
Judge, I'm going to show receipts 2711 through 2715.
Proceed.
Mr. Wells, these have not been admitted, so just be careful not showing here. Start with, just take a look at those and tell me if you recognize what's depicted there.
Okay, I do.
And if you recall, during one of the breaks, I paused the McDowell video, which is Plaintiff's Exhibit 20, and showed you those perspectives that are contained in 2711 through 2715.
Yes.
All right, and do those fairly and accurately depict those still shots of the video that's not been admitted when I asked you the location of the vehicle relative to the turn lane that we described.
Well, 4 of these are blurred images at an angle somewhere outside her car. This one is your, this one is your best shot. Apologies. Which is the one looking straight down, kind of the hood edge of her car, if you will, straight forward at the police car.
I think the question is that these photos are accurate depictions of the video that you viewed. I think that's the only question at the moment.
That is the question.
Yes.
All right. And, based on that, I'll move for position of 2711 through 2715.
That's fine, no objection.
Mr. Fricke?
No objection, Your Honor. Excuse me.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. 2711 through 2715 inclusively are admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge.
Proceed.
And I'm going to trouble Mr. Ellis to toggle to the film mic. You may approach again, Judge.
Proceed.
It's gonna take us just. Oh, okay.
They're saying they're not controlling it, so.
I apologize. Can you look at it too?
Judge, I'm going to attempt to publish now.
Sorry, counsel.
I've got my fingers crossed free, Mr. Osser.
2711, just for the record.
Okay. Sometimes turning off those little lights help, actually. But I'm not sure.
A little bit, thanks, Judge. All right, can you see on the, well, do you have a screen in front of you?
I do.
Okay. So just to orient, I don't want to block this, to orient, when we looked at the McDowell video at 11 seconds in, we can actually see the 11 seconds down here. This is the perspective of the video, is that right?
I didn't look at the time, but, okay.
Okay. And you understand, I'm going to show with my pen here, this white line going from the top to the exhibit tag down to the center is the lane line, the painted lane line, is that right?
Yes.
And parallel to that is Miss McDowell's vehicle. Do you see that there?
Well, there's a line there.
Well, you've seen the video, right?
Yeah.
And you know that's her, look, the video pointing down as she's out of the window. You understand that, right?
Right, we don't know that it's pointing straight down at all. It's pointing somewhere, probably at an angle, but not straight down, doesn't look like.
All right. You will agree, Mr. Wells, that that's the video on her phone as she's coming out of the window at some vantage. Is that fair?
A snip of it, yes.
All right. And the distance you would estimate between the edge of her car right here to the lane is how much?
Well, using the proper perspective, I put 3.23 feet from my diagram.
Okay. Is that, so you're saying that this is representative of 3.23 3 feet.
3.23. That's not representative of anything because we don't know the angle or the zoom or anything else.
Yeah, it's on the video though, right?
It is, but that doesn't mean it's accurate to show a distance.
I'm gonna try and experiment here for just a moment. Mrs. Winnie, can you control the light over this? Sometimes if you control the light above it and take it off, then there's more contrast and you can see this better. Maybe it'll work and maybe it won't work. I believe the light switches are over in this corner. I know this isn't our regular courtroom.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
That's not the one I want. I want like over here above this photograph. That's a little better. Does that help at all? Maybe it helps. Doesn't make it any better at all.
This is a smaller, blurrier view, but I can see it.
Yeah. I don't think that makes any difference. Thank you, Mr. Gaddis. But you were great, by the way, Mr. Gaddis.
All right, I'm gonna publish 12 now, sorry, 27, 12.
You can also publish it to the jury. I mean, you can hand it to them.
Yeah, actually, can I pass that around?
You can. That's what we used to do in the old days before we had this stuff.
Permission to publish 27, 12 as well.
Proceed.
You also see 27, 12 on your screen.
Yes.
You would agree that in the middle of 27, 12, although it's a tad blurry, this appears to be the side mirror of Ms. McDowell's driver's side door. Is that right?
Possibly, yes.
Right. Video will show us, right? And the distance, so you're saying the distance between her vehicle here where my pen is to the white line is 3.3 feet. Is that right?
3.23 on the diagram. Doesn't look that way here.
Okay.
You can.
The Court's Commission, I'm going to publish 2715. I think this is the exhibit that you said was the best perspective. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The one looking down the hood of her car.
Yes. All right. So looking down the hood of her car, the perspective, the phone is outside of the vehicle at this point in time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Meaning whoever's taking the video is looking back towards the right upper corner of the exhibit, you agree, right?
I don't know where the person is looking. The phone's pointed forward.
All right. And when we discussed this at one of the breaks, you said that this perspective could potentially skew the distance, the appearance of distance, depending which, where the center focus of the camera is. Is that right?
I don't recall saying that.
So the perspective of the camera doesn't make any difference with regard to the appearance of distances?
No. I said that perspective is everything when you're trying to get distances.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And so in this exhibit 2715, right where my pen is the tire of her vehicle, you agree?
Potentially.
And the lane line that we're talking about is in the lower left-hand corner as well, is that right?
It is.
And so you're telling the jury that that distance is 3.23 feet?
I believe it is, yes.
All right, you were asked, or one of the other things you were asked by the Attorney General's office was to document Ainsworth as you were traveling towards 96th, right?
Yes.
Did they tell you why?
They wanted a longer view of the approach of Mr. Cowden.
And they tell you you why they wanted that longer view of the approach of Mr. Cowden?
I don't know what the strategy was behind it.
Or did they tell you that Mr. Frederick had told them that by the time Cowden arrived at the location that he did, Mr. Ellis would have already been on the ground?
I'm gonna object, that assumes facts, not evidence, it's not accurate either.
I don't know. Were you advised of this?
Were you told that?
No.
They didn't tell you why they wanted you to obtain the perspective of Mr. Cowden before he started the video?
They wanted that perspective simply to show what the potential view was looking down Ainsworth approaching 96th.
All right, so they didn't tell you that Mr. Frederick's opinion was that Mr. Ellis would have already been on the ground as he approached?
Your Honor, again, asked and answered, and that's not what the witness testified about Mr. Fredericks.
Well,
Been asked about it, Judge.
It was testified about the Cowden video.
restate your question.
Sure. So you weren't told to document that perspective because of comments by Mr. Frederick to Ms. East and Mr. Liu, that by the time Mr. Cowden got to that location, Mr. Ellis was necessarily on the ground already?
Your Honor, same objection.
Just as you repeat the question.
Overruled. You may answer that.
I don't know anything about what Mr. Frederick said or what he portrayed in his video. I was just told to establish a view.
Okay, all right. Can you pull up Exhibit 521B for us, sir? Thank you, sir. So just so I understand, this is information that was obtained from the Faro scan, or at least the 4 scans that were done by the Sheriff's Department. Is that accurate?
Yes, this is the ortho mosaic they created after they did the scans.
Okay. And so each of those little colored, I'll call them thumbs, tacks, are different scan sites. Is that accurate?
Correct, 4 total scans.
Okay. And so this aerial view is from what perspective?
2D bird's eye overhead.
And how do we get that from those 4 different scans?
All part of the magic of the software, I believe, to turn it into this ortho mosaic. They can be done on all of them because when they're doing the scans, it's also going up in the air and it's picking up different stuff and you can trim stuff out. I don't know what they did to like other vehicles not involved, etc. But this is what you end up with, and everything provides, at least initially, a 2D overhead view. They're doing the same thing with cars now when you look at your screen and it shows the overhead view.
So is it fair, I'm sure I understand it correctly, is it fair that this is a kind of a cumulative representation of the 4 scans, but it's as accurate as any of the other 1 scans?
Yes,
Okay, meaning the placement of the items on here are as accurate as you described on direct examination by the deceased.
yes.
And so, right in the middle, right-hand, upper right-hand corner on the screen is
Okay.
the actual patrol vehicle at issue in this case, is not?
Right in the middle over the stop bar, yes.
Yes. Okay, so that would have been Officer Collins and Officer Burbank's vehicle as it appeared and documented that night.
When these scans were done, yes.
All right. It appears as though that vehicle is in the lane of travel to go straight through that intersection. Is that accurate?
Close to the left edge, but yes.
All right. It's at the stop, I think you call it the stop.
Stop bar.
Stop bar, okay. As if it stopped at a stoplight.
Could have been, yes.
And that wasn't moved at any point during the investigation as far as you know, right?
As far as I know.
Can you, and this might be the wrong exhibit to do it, so.
I can zoom in, but it's like on a PDF.
So can you get to the perspective where you could show us the perspective of the purple Faro scan, 9640002?
Sure.
And, perfect. And so, Mr. Fricky asked you about a water bottle that was located on scene. And if I'm looking at the lower left-hand corner of the exhibit as it appears on the screen, can you see it?
Yes.
All right, and so you're circling with your cursor, it looks black in this, and is that because of the contrast of how it's being recorded?
Yes,
Is that a clear water bottle?
it is.
All right. And so that was there at that location when the scene was scanned following this incident, is that fair?
When this scan was done, yes.
All right. And can you zoom into the passenger side? Actually, before you do, let me ask you a question. As we look at this exhibit as it's displayed, it almost looks like the windshield is broken out. Can you explain what we're looking at?
Glass is weird in the scans, so other than that, I don't know why it looks like that, but you would think so, but I think it's scanning in such detail that this is the top of the dash. You can see the headrest behind and the headrest behind. The beams are going right through the glass like it's not there.
Okay.
So that's why it looks like that.
Okay, that makes sense to me, Mr. Wells. If you look at the passenger rear window, I believe it's tinted. Is that why that one looks different than the passenger front window?
Yes,
Can you explain that, just so we all understand why
right.
we're seeing?
It's tinted darker, so the beam's not going to go through to show us the detail in behind that. The beam can still go through it, but it's probably getting deflected a little bit, but it's just not going to show the detail. And they actually make a spray that you can put on mirrors and things like that when you do your scans, so you don't get that type of reflection.
Understood. And so, is it your understanding then that we can kind of see right through the passenger front window and the windshield because those don't have the type of tint that the passenger rear window has?
Certainly not as dark, yeah.
Okay, all right. And directly below the passenger front window is the box of donuts that Mr. Fricky had you point out before, right?
Yes.
And those are powdered sugar, raspberry filled donuts.
Yeah, I saw the photo of that. I'm not sure if there were any still in there, but the box is there.
Have you seen the photos that are associated with the scene, the still photos?
Yes,
So you're aware of what it looks like?
yes.
And it's a box of donuts that appears to be crushed, right?
The box is crumpled, yes.
And directly above that on the officer's passenger front window, there was corresponding powdered sugar, wasn't there?
It looked like there were streaks of that in the photos, yes. Some white substance.
Consistent with the location that the box is seen on this exhibit.
The box was below the door and window, yes.
And Mr. Willis, did you look at photographs of the street immediately around the crumpled box of donuts?
Probably.
There's powdered sugar on the ground and the street as well, around the area of the box, right?
That could have been, I don't recall specifically.
It would be documented in some photos.
It would be.
If you could zoom back out for us just a little bit, I'm almost done, sir. Perfect, that's mine right there. So in the photograph to the left of center, kind of bottom quadrant, you can see it looks like a recycled can and a garbage can. You see those two?
Yes,
And you reviewed Mr. Cowden's video to determine, I think earlier I asked you where you believed Mr. Ellis was handcuffed.
right.
And it was right in front of those two garbage cans or recycling bins, is that right?
In that area, yes.
And if you go back or turn to the right, there's even more garbage cans farther north on the street. There you
Yep.
go. And
So it was more likely those two garbage cans that I think I had the circle for the handcuffing in front of.
okay. How about this? There's two different sets of garbage cans that are visible in the Cowden video. Do you agree?
Yes,
And the Farrell confirms that two different locations, there's two separate areas of garbage or recycling.
yes,
Okay. And I think you told us that Mr. Ellis's body, as it was recovered or documented on the Farrell scan, was about 27 point some feet from the front of the patrol vehicle. Is that right?
yes.
And I think Mr. Fricky asked you some questions. The difference between where it is comes to rest and where the cuffing that you've identified is about 7 or 8 additional. Is that right?
I think I said 7, 6 point something or 7, yes.
Well, I don't think the jury saw that. There was an elliptical type area, right?
Yes, Judge.
And the area he measured across was across the widest of it, if you will, the north-south axis. He didn't give us a dimension for east and west.
Well, I think he did. Do you remember, Mr. Wells, we had you measured from the area of the red circle to the front of the car, and I think you said that was 19 or something like that, right?
Yes,
And then Mr. Fricky had you measure from that same circle to where Mr. Ellis's body was finally recovered, right?
yes.
And that was an additional 7 or 8 feet?
6 to 7 to 8 in there. The elliptical that the judge was talking about was the purple, was the area of the entire event as I saw it. Then I dissected that to get a distance of 6 point something as well.
Okay. And so depending on where the cuffing occurred, whether in front of the first set of garbage cans or the second set of garbage cans, Mr. Ellis's body moved anywhere from 6, whatever you just said, 6.5 feet to 12.5 feet from that location to your neck.
It was somehow moved for medical treatment, I'm sure, to this position.
Your Honor, I object as to speculation at that last statement.
Jury should disregard that speculation. But you can give an estimate in answering to Mr. Osser's question without speculating on the reason why.
Right. The body's moved some distance from where there is documented interaction between Mr. Ellis and officers Collins and Burbank. You agree?
Agreed.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Before we get to Mr. Conrad, we'll take our afternoon recess for 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss the case among yourselves with anyone else, and do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Thank you. always say to folks when we got these headsets that we turn them off for recesses, but during the course of the trial, they're on. And they're very sensitive, and people can pick up lots of things that you're saying. And I think I even told the story, maybe even mentioned it in this courtroom, but that at least one time we had one of the jurors who was using it swear they could pick up a conversation that took place in a different courtroom. And I have reason to think it's true. So, and not just an auditory hallucination. But, so I'm just reminding counsel that when we're in session, if you're whispering to yourselves or your clients, you may well be overheard. And so, as I say, during the breaks, we turn those things off, and you should be at least more understanding of what's being heard or not heard by other people. But anyway, just as a reminder to you all.
Is there something specifically that the court's been told that people are overhearing, or is it just a general caution?
It's just a general comment. I haven't heard of anything in particular anybody's ever heard.
Understood.
I think I've understood that some people think they're able to hear some of the conversation that's going on at the council table. What they've heard, I don't know.
Judge, that concerns me a little, only because I think, I don't know what juror numbers they are. One of the jurors now is wearing one of those devices as well.
Right, I think it's juror, one in the end, juror 87, 8.
Can you, Your Honor, ask that juror if that person was able to overhear?
I'm not gonna do that, no. I'm telling you guys.
You gotta communicate with them.
You gotta communicate, but you got pads of paper and stuff, you're gonna have to, that's part of the nature of things.
In the court list, I mean, if our microphones are off, we're relatively safe here.
I'm trying to tell you that even in the good old days, when we didn't have all these microphones, people could hear on these headsets, people whispering. And so I would routinely tell lawyers, when we were down there and we weren't dealing with all the microphones and stuff, that was a risk, and you should, during proceedings, communicate with yourselves, probably in writing on legal pads. And that this would be turned off during all recesses and during any kind of break in the proceedings, that our staff would turn them off. But other than that, you have to assume that you conceivably could be heard. So whatever you say, you should say it just with some discretion.
And we, as a JA in the old courtroom, I could turn off the microphone so no one can hear. But here, it's that way, no. You can still hear.
Anyway, what do you mean microphones, Susan? You mean the pickup for the listening device, yeah. Anyway, so another day in the life. My world has gotten more and more complicated. But my experience at least allowed us to pass the exhibit around. Now, did you guys collect the exhibit that was passed around? You got them? Great. But, Mr. Osser, who I think was around for some of those kinds of days, maybe not, probably forgotten about it because it's been so long since we started doing things like that. All right, so sometimes that experience is useful to recall. Most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's obsolete. Are we ready for the jury? And Mr. Conner, you're going to ask your questions if any you have.
Yes, Judge. And I wanted to ask your permission before the jury comes out. There's an exhibit that's new to me. I think it involves Mr. Wells. I wanted to voir dire him quickly about before the jury came back out with the court's permission.
It's one he hasn't testified about so far?
Correct.
I don't know where you're going. Go ahead.
Okay. And Mr. Wells.
What exhibit number are we talking about?
It's exhibit 534. Could you pull that up for us?
Was this something for some reason you couldn't discuss with him during the break or before we got here today? I'm just wondering why we're doing this on my time. This sounds like discovery.
Well, I guess I was a bit hesitant to go make contact with the state's experts without their permission, so I just kind of, but I can certainly make sure to do that next time if I have. I'm sorry. Judge.
Okay. You can always let them know you want to talk to the expert.
Okay.
They might say, fine, let us listen.
Okay. So 534, Mr. Wills, can you just tell me what it is?
That's a viewpoint from the upper window of the White House looking down towards where the intersection is.
Okay. And so you've seen Miss White's video. She's got 2 videos, right? Miss White took 2 videos during this incident. You aware of that?
I only know of the Vivint videos that from their house.
Okay. So is this, I guess my question is 534 showing the perspective that Miss White would have from her window?
It is not.
Okay, so what is it showing?
It is the perspective from the upper front window above the air conditioner looking down at the intersection.
Okay. And did you do this because the Whites wouldn't allow you up into that room?
We did that knowing that as the survey was being done that was shown in some of those other exhibits, the window frames and the window glass and the air conditioner was being shot at the same time. And then in the 3D view, I was asked to, or in the 3D of the diagramming program, to create this view looking out that window. As close as we could get the camera to the window above the air conditioner, just to show that view, I believe, of Kenneth is his first name, I believe, is the person who was up in that particular bedroom, just to show that view, and that's what this is portraying.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, when we're looking at the White's house, it's the top window that had the air conditioner in it, and this is a viewpoint from that top window.
Correct.
Okay, and that's where Kenneth White was situated?
That's my understanding.
Okay. But your report did indicate that the Whites wouldn't allow you upstairs into that top bedroom, is that right?
Correct. We couldn't go up there to get any hand measurements or photos out of that window.
Did they tell you why?
It was just that we couldn't.
Okay. Have you made a 3D model of this that you can utilize like the Faro scan?
This is in addition to the Faro scan. We surveyed control points and these points to the window so that when you then, with those upper point measurements and the blue lines we showed earlier on Miss White's windows, these same blue lines were created up above with a brown line on it. So you can simply take the viewpoint in 3D and bring yourself forward till you just come through the window, if you will, and it's looking down there, and then I just screenshot that.
Okay. So I guess my last question is, how were you able to create 534 if you weren't able to go up into that room and see the perspective from that vantage point?
These were surveyed with the total station, you put normally there's a reflector. This is reflectorless, so you don't have to put a height when you shoot them. It knows how high they are above where the total station is. So we drew the outline of the house, right, the walls of the house, some of the pillars, and then the windows, so we could see them. And then when you convert that to the 3D look, it shows those points up there, and we just drew some lines.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, we're ready for the jury? Let's have the jury. All right, welcome back, everyone. Please be seated. Okay, when you're ready, Mr. Conrad.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Wells.
Good afternoon.
Just have a couple brief questions for you. So you've obviously reviewed a lot of information with the jury today, and one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the different pieces of evidence that you relied upon in order to formulate some of your calculations. Now, the first piece you relied upon, or amongst the many, was the Vivint videos, correct?
Well, it was actually the scan, but yes, the Vivint videos were part of that.
Okay. And the Vivint videos, you've reviewed all of them, is that right?
Yes,
And they show my client first arriving on scene after Mr. Cowden and Miss McDowell have already taken their videos, is that right?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And in fact, after Miss McDowell and Mr. Cowden have already left the scene.
I believe that to be correct also.
Okay. And you weren't asked to do any specific measurements with regard to my client, Officer Rankin, after he appeared on scene. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. And so the measurements that you have taken in this modeling that you've done is specifically related to the perspectives of Miss Sarah McDowell, right?
Yes,
Mr. Coden as well, Seth Coden,
yes,
okay. And then the Whites from their vantage point at the house.
correct.
Okay. And one of the things I wanted to clarify with you as well is this idea about where the cuffing took place and then where Mr. Ellis came to rest. And so, could you pull up 521 for us? I believe that's the 3D model that you made, but I'd like you to open it within the platform that you have, that you've made specific measurements for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. And permission to publish, Your Honor.
This is 521.0 or 521?
This is 521, but yeah, my understanding is that there's two programs he's able to open.
Oh, hold on a second. Well, 521 in general was admitted, and so are a lot of sub-521s, A, B, C, D, and so on. But I'm not sure if the one we're looking at was the one that was ever admitted. No, it's changed, so.
I don't have it.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
I believe it was.
Yeah, 521 was admitted. That's what I described as the scene to go video. That's the way I described it on my notes. But what I was looking at initially was that elliptical deal that was taken up when Mr. Freebie was asking, Mr. Fricky was asking questions. How could I possibly confuse those two gentlemen? Anyway, inside joke, ladies and gentlemen. Anyhow, so, Mr. Conlon, but what I'm looking at now looks like, yeah, I think that is one that was admitted. I'm not sure which one is. Which one is this one, Mr.?
I took the elliptical off this one. I can put it back on.
I don't know if you wanted it on or not. I don't know if it was.
I believe this is how he took a screenshot of this, and that this is how one of the 521, any alphabetical number is admitted.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have permission to publish this?
Give me just a quick second about one thing. I think,
Mr. Conrad, that's 521. Oh,
yeah, I think what you're looking at is 521.0. Is that the one you want? That's not 521.
Well,
You want 521 up?
I would like 521.
Could you please put that one up instead, Mr. Jones? Or Ms. Wells?
But Judge, my understanding is that 521 has two different programs that he's able to open it with.
Right.
I guess for clarification, you're only admitting 521 through use of the 3D scan program.
Look, as I understand it, I don't know. All I know is 521's admitted.
Okay.
Right. What I was trying to let you know is, since you're not looking at a monitor and it wasn't being shown, that what I was looking on my monitor was 521.0, not 521. You can show 521.0 or 521, I don't care, they're both admitted.
Well, why don't we just make it easier? I'll just do 521.0, and we'll just go from there. My mistake, Judge. I thought through 521, if he used the program that he has in order to do different overlays, he could do the specific overlay that he used for 521.0.
And he could take measurements and stuff, sure, but that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that what was about to go up on the screen to the jury was not what you were asking for. It was 521.0, and that's different from 521. I'm indifferent to which one you have shown. I just want to make sure you knew what was going to show up on the screen.
That's fine. Can you publish 521.0, please? Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so the red zero that you have marked as the handcuff area, that's the area that you attribute to where Mr. Ellis was pinned, all right?
Based on my assumption that that's where it happened, yes.
Okay. And then we measured from the center point of that to where Mr. Ellis ends up, and that measures around from 6 to 8 feet, am I understanding?
And, it's 7.58 feet, I believe.
Okay. The issue with the elliptical diagram that you pulled up, that is the general area where the altercation took place, am I understanding correctly?
Correct, I just, watching the videos in the first location, I could see them moving to the whole area that was covered. That was the purpose of the elliptical, just to show that general area, because trying to snip every second of all that video, it would have just been a jumble of color.
Understood. So that other elliptical circle, I guess, or elliptical color that you overlaid, that altercation took place prior to my client ever arriving on scene, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And then I want to ask you about the viewpoint from the White's household. So you actually went to the White's house, is that correct?
Yes.
And you actually created a 3D model of the viewpoint from the top window at the White's home, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And in creating that, you gave that information to the Attorney General's office as well, right?
As a screenshot, yes.
Okay. And that was not something that the state ever covered with you during your direct examination today?
I don't recall talking about that, no.
Okay. I don't know the answer to that.
Redirect.
Well, you were asked on cross-examination by defense counsel about exhibit 533B and where that photo was taken from. Could you please pull up 533B and tell us, for the jury to see, and describe where you took that photo from?
I was standing on the sidewalk at an angle, I guess looks brown or maybe darker gray, the house with kind of the checkerboard panes in the window, straight across the street from that, standing on the sidewalk, but I'm looking directly at, from this over here, the White House.
All right. Thank you. Now, you were asked some questions about the handcuffing spot, final resting. I think that was 533O, 521L, one you just had up. Defense counsel was asking you on cross about the area being somewhere between 6 to 12 feet away. Do you know, was Mr. Ellis 12 feet away from his, at the point that you saw, where you identified him as being handcuffed to his final resting place?
No, it was a little over 7.5 feet.
And did you have an opportunity to measure that again at the break?
Yes.
And do you know how Mr. Ellis was moved from the spot that you identified as handcuffing to the location where his body was shown on the stand?
No direct speculation.
Well, the question is, does he know? Maybe he doesn't, maybe he does.
I do not know.
You don't have any personal knowledge about how he was moved?
Not directly, no.
You were also asked some questions about the scene and whether or not you did your work after the case had been charged. What work had already been done, to your knowledge, in terms of documenting the scene before you were retained?
I believe Pierce County had done a complete investigation and provided it to your office or whomever before I got involved.
And what did that investigation involve, in terms of what evidence did you see from it?
I saw the scan data, the scene photos, I think 3 or 4 videos that an officer at the scene took, just generally around the scene.
And in your experience as former investigator with the sheriff's office, is that typical that that would be the kind of information you would have and work off of to create additional diagrams or scans?
Yeah, you have to do an investigation and get all that stuff to work on it, and many times you get asked to work on it for another agency for whatever reason, and you'd get that information, so that's what you started with.
And would it be unusual for you to later be doing additional measurements or creating additional exhibits based on information that was initially gathered at the time of the events?
It's not uncommon to do that at all.
I want to ask you about the question of Ms. McDowell's, the positioning of Ms. McDowell's car. You were asked a number of questions on cross-examination using some still photos, I guess you could say, from the McDowell video. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to actually look at Ms. McDowell's video as well?
Yes.
And can you tell us, you made a comment about how it really depends on perspective when you were asked to describe the distance between Ms. McDowell's, the edge of Ms. McDowell's car and the white line on the road. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Can you just explain to the jury what you meant by that in terms of perspective?
Part of the reason you do a diagram of any scene in addition to the photos is because a photo can skew angles, can skew distances. The diagram, when you do it, is a 2D view looking down, so you actually know the distances things are away. We used to instruct it to the new crime scene people all the time. Always make sure that you take 4 directions with your camera, but then measure the objects or whatever you're looking at so you can see that bird's eye 2D view down, because an angled view with a camera can be completely different. A lot of times it can show something under a table, and then when you look at the 2D view, it's actually 3 feet outside that table. So the perspective is an important factor, and you're trying to get the bird's eye view.
So the photographs that you were shown by defense counsel of 2711 to 2714, In your experience, did those photos accurately reflect the distance from the edge of Ms. McDowell's car to the white line?
No, we don't know what the angle was, the zoom, how she was holding her hand, so those are out of perspective, if you will, and not reliable.
I'm going to have you take a look at what's been marked as Exhibit 20B, if you could, please.
Just plain 20?
Yes, plain 20B.
I don't have that in my information here.
Neither do I, Judge.
I'm sorry.
Neither do I. Here.
I believe it was. Yeah, I have another one. Pass it around. Oh, I'm sorry, it's on your screen.
Oh, there it is.
Sorry, I'm here.
Well, Judge, I haven't seen 20B, if I can see it.
Absolutely. Are you able to look at 20B?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's a capture image from Miss McDowell's phone video pointed forward towards the patrol car.
I would offer 20B.
Objection?
Objection, Your Honor.
20B is admitted.
May we publish, Your Honor?
Proceed.
Thank you. All right, and can you just explain to the jury what we're looking at here, Mr. Wells?
It's the left half of the hood of the McDowell vehicle. You can see the hood seam along the fender, the solid white lines to the left. The patrol car is up front, dashed lines to the right, garbage cans, etc., up in front. And you see that the street lights that are along the north edge of the roadway, which actually continue back behind this image, are casting shadows from right to left. So the left side of the McDowell vehicle here is in shadow.
And can you just, and I don't know if you can step down there and perhaps and point to this screen here. Can you show us where the shadow is that you're referencing?
There's the street lights. Continue back here. There's also one here. Back.
And you said that you placed the McDowell vehicle
2-3.
feet from the white line. What did you do that based on?
Well, this image helps here, and then the typical travel path of a car near the center of a lane. But when you look at this one, and I'm looking down the hood line, it goes, to me, straight into the back center of the police car, which is
And-
about 6 feet wide.
Okay, and maybe can you step down again and just show us what you're referring to there?
So here's the hood line, and if you continue forward, it goes through the middle of the patrol car. Ford Explorer is about 6 feet wide. So along this line, you'd be hitting about the 3 foot mark. The .23 is 3 inches. So 3 to 3 inches, and that's about what that distance is.
Okay, just a moment. That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Double follow-up, Your Honor.
Go right ahead.
I think I'll stay right here. It'll be very short. Just to be clear, that last photo 20B, the yellow light, that was the rear ambers on the patrol vehicle. Is that right?
Looks like it, yes.
Yeah, and that was kind of a warning as to, for people who are behind.
Well, it certainly indicates that the stop patrol car is there for a reason.
Okay. Now, when Mr. Conrad was asking you questions about the various perspectives, and he mentioned the White's perspective, you're talking about Ariana White, her perspective, correct? Where the Vivint video was located?
When we were talking about Ayanna White, yes.
Yeah.
Out
and
the
You didn't
windows.
talk to her brother, for instance.
I have not talked to her brother.
And when they say the Whites, it's a little misleading. It's Ariana White, correct? Who you're
Right.
referring to.
Yes.
Okay. And then finally, as indicated here just a moment ago, You talked about the position of Mr. Ellis along with Collins and Burbank, officers Collins and Burbanks. It's been phrased as handcuffing. Again, you don't know how many handcuffing took place, right? At that point.
Correct. It looked to me like it was, but I don't know for a fact that it was accomplished.
And you used part of that to get that information, that location from the Vivint videos you mentioned, is that right?
And Mr. Cowden's.
Mr. Cowden's and Ms. White's? Ariana White's as well, or just Mr. Cowden in the Vivint videos?
Right, I don't think Ayana White took any videos
Right.
herself.
And did you use some of the audio from the Vivint videos?
I didn't use any of the audio.
Did you ever review any of the audio?
Didn't listen to it.
Okay, thank you. And again, even though you're using the word handcuffing, you acknowledge, at least from the Cowden video and the Vivint video, you're not actually seeing any handcuffing.
Correct. I just thought the arm positions were such that that would be what would be happening, so that was my assumption.
Okay. And whether they were able to finalize handcuffing, you have no idea.
You're right.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Just a couple questions. I'm gonna stand here because I'll take the floor as well. Ms. Peaks asked you, the way she phrased the question twice with respect to where Mr. Ellis' body was documented at the end of 521, whichever number you use. She kept saying how he was moved there. Do you remember her saying that?
I do.
You have no idea if he was moved there or he moved himself there, do you?
Correct.
In fact, you understand he was struggling with at least 2 police officers up until he was completely restrained, right?
That's my understanding.
And do you have information that he was able to move those police officers while they were attempting to restrain him?
I saw that on the video.
Okay. And so whether he moved there or he was moved there, you couldn't tell us, right?
Correct.
Finally, Ms. Eakes had you admit 20B, I think was the portion of the video from Exhibit 20, right?
Yes.
And that's what I admitted on cross-examination were other screenshots of the same video, right?
Yes, I believe your number was 15 on that one.
It was, well, 27, 15 and above, right?
Right.
And you're saying that the ones I used are not good for placing the car, but the one the state used is from the same source. Is that what I hear?
No, it was the blurry versions looking down at the white line that I was referring to as unreliable. The other one was good.
What you testified on redirect was that you're trained to document with a camera and take still photographs to place items accurately, right?
Well, that's one of the ways.
That wasn't done here, right? As it relates to Miss McDowell's vehicle.
No, it got moved before anybody got there to do that.
Right, and so what both of the parties have shown you are snippets of the video that you're saying allow you to determine where that vehicle was located before it was moved. Is that fair?
Approximately located, yes.
A guesstimate, right?
No.
No? You know exactly where it was at?
No, I know approximately where it's at, but it wasn't a guesstimate.
All right, approximately where it was at.
Yes.
Thank you, that's all I have, Judge.
Really brief, Judge. Am I okay to stand here as well? Mr. Wells, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are an expert in reconstructing scenes, correct?
Well, in documenting them and showing them after the fact, so yes.
Sure. So some of the things that you've shown us today, right? Placing items or people in certain positions as they may have been, as documented by Faro scans, video, all the information available to you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you've done that in this case. Is that right?
Close as I can get it, yes.
Okay. And you have never created or reconstructed anything having to do with any Ayanna White video, is that correct?
I don't know of any Ayanna White video.
Okay. But you did create 3D views from the upper window of the White's house, is that right?
Yes,
And you provided those to the state?
I did.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Any further, Director? Mr. Fricky, anything further?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Oster, anything else?
I suppose that, just in case something comes up, we haven't sent the recall potentially.
Okay, I'll let you guys make the arrangements for that if necessary. But other than that, we'll excuse you, Mr. Wells.
Good.
Yeah,
Sorry. I did have one quick follow-up. Can I ask one other question?
if you're gonna do it, you better do it now. I'm just about to let him go.
Mr. Wells, how many hours do you think that you've worked on this case?
I'm not sure, I haven't tallied them up in a while. It's been a whole bunch.
Over 200?
No, I don't think that many.
Over 100?
Total from the start, maybe 100.
Okay, so 100 plus.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Anything further based on that? No? Okay. Now we'll let you go, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
It's now 3:57 PM, so we'll take our recess for the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please come back tomorrow at the usual time. Do not discuss the case among yourselves with anyone else, and do not permit anyone to discuss case with you or in your presence. Thank you.